The most impactful games in the gaming scene in 2017 and so far in 2018 are Fortnite and PUBG. The two games share a lot of striking similarities in that they are both third-person shooters, Battle Royale games where 100 players face off in an ever-shrinking safe space, available on PC, console, and now on mobile for both PUBG and Fortnite. They're both heavily based around looting, killing people, stealing their gear, and generally gearing up to get the best stuff for the next fight, and both of the games have a ton of cosmetics added on top so that you can be everything from a character from your favorite Battle Royale movie all the way to a rainbow unicorn warrior. And lots of YouTubers have done comparisons like this before, but I'm not them. My name is Drifter. I like to go a little bit more in depth in these kind of things, and I've noticed something that they haven't, something that strikes me as unusual and I wanted to talk about, and that's that this PUBG versus Fortnite thing isn't new. This is simply history repeating itself again, and there's a striking number of similarities between Dota versus League of Legends and Fortnite versus PUBG. They have way more overlap than you would ever expect, despite being in completely different areas of the gaming market, and I think that I can predict the future of both Fortnite and PUBG using Dota and League of Legends as examples. So let's get right into it today. Dota 2 is a hardcore PC game with really advanced mechanics. You have turning speed, you have scrolls, there's a huge player set, they're viable all the time, there's different movement speeds, all sorts of, for a long time the damage numbers were quite random depending on what character, tons of advanced spells, and it's just a really hardcore game. By the way, the gameplay you're seeing for Dota right now is not mine, it's from Choco the Chocobo, shout out to him, he's linked below in the description. Dota started as an explosively popular mod on Warcraft 3 and was later bought out by old money PC companies like Valve, reshuffled, re-edited, updated, and released to the public. It is far more demanding than League of Legends both graphically and in terms of skill gaps. It's just a harder game to play and there's a lot more to learn. Similarly, PUBG is a hardcore PC game with really advanced gameplay mechanics, at least when it comes to shooting and shooter mechanics, debatable building on Fortnite, but we'll stick with advanced shooting mechanics. It started as an explosively popular mod, thank you Brian Green for your work in the good old Arma 2 community working on those mods, and it was eventually brought over into a new game and then released on PC after old money companies got involved like Tencent and Microsoft. To be fair to them, Brian Green was hired at Bluehole to develop this game as sort of a long shot project for them, but once it got popular, they were very quickly bought by Tencent and Microsoft, so old money got involved very fast, just like it did with Dota. PUBG is way more demanding than Fortnite, both graphically and debatably in skill gaps. There's a lot of people that like to say Fortnite has a higher skill gap than PUBG, and it definitely does when it comes to building mechanics, but when it comes to shooting mechanics, I think that PUBG is far more complicated. PUBG does have vehicles leaning and is more of a traditional shooter versus a hipfire spray game. Before I continue with any more similarities like this, I do want to say there's an overlap in that both Dota, Fortnite, PUBG, and all of these games have huge player bases and make lots of money. So in the case of Fortnite and PUBG, they're both doing very well. The player bases are enormous and they're making money, but they're not the same player bases and they're not quite the same money. League of Legends has by far a much bigger player base than Dota, especially in Asian countries. This is because the game is free to play and it's not graphically demanding. You can run, or at least at the time of its launch, could run League of Legends on most any gaming PC and it costs $0 to download and install. It makes its money primarily based on really neat skins and customizations that you buy in-game. Later on it would do merchandising, but those skins is where the money is at. League of Legends is a cartoony or cel-shaded game, and the simple graphics make it very easy to pump skins, and because the game is kind of silly in its own right, it's very easy to make skins that are thematically acceptable. Fortnite, similarly, has a far bigger player base than that of PUBG. It used to be the other way around, but recently the game has exploded and the player base is enormous. It may even be chasing League of Legends at this point. Fortnite, like League of Legends, is free to play and is not at all graphically demanding, so people can run it on most any gaming PC, at least if you turn the graphics settings down, and it's not too hard to set up on console or mobile either. It makes its money primarily through selling skins and neat dancing customizations or the V-Bucks Battle Pass. It's all microtransactions, it's all customizations, and not anything at all to help you win the game. Much like League of Legends, it's all cosmetic. And like League of Legends, it has cartoony or cel-shaded graphics that make it way easier to make thematically appropriate skins or just goofy fun skins in general. Changing this around, Dota 2 launched on Steam as a $40 early access game where you buy the game at $40, but you get all future content forever, all maps, modes, updates, all that sort of things. But it did have microtransactions for skins and cosmetics on top. PUBG launched on Steam as a $30 early access game. It just recently moved into its 1.0 state, but if you bought the game for $30 even today, you get all future content, all maps, all modes, all guns, all characters, everything you need to play the game, except skins. Skins you'll have to pay for. There's microtransactions and loot boxes for those, and that's all the post-launch revenue is in skins. So you'll see that both the design goals, the player bases, and the price points for PUBG and Dota overlap very strongly in the same way that they overlap with Fortnite and League of Legends. They both had very, very similar launch strategies, and their player bases and revenue sources played out very, very similarly. It's also interesting as well to see the history and beef between the creators of Dota 2 and League of Legends respectively. Each one believed that they were stealing each other's idea or that they retained the right to the game. They had a falling out between each other. Different companies even tried to poach each other's staff members. And on a much lesser scale, PUBG has accused Fortnite of copying its idea, which is interesting because PUBG has the license, the engine the game runs on through Epic Games. So one of the accusations is maybe they were stealing stuff from them during their business cooperations when they were developing and optimizing this engine. And there is a really strong beef right there in the same way that there's a strong beef between the creators of Dota 2 and League of Legends. And this spills over into the communities as well because they're similar and competing games, and that little bit of hostility goes a very long way. So the fans of Dota 2 tend not to like the fans of League of Legends and vice versa, in the same way that PUBG diehards tend not to like Fortnite players and vice versa. There are some areas of this comparison where we can flip it around, where the roles are probably better ascribed to the other companies. PUBG runs on spaghetti code, just like League of Legends. As much as I like PUBG and it's a fun game and all of that, it was made by a first-time developer. The optimization and the code is very questionable. There's lots of strange things that happen, a lot of strangely coded guns and glitches and bugs and things that you just wouldn't run into in most first-person shooters, in the same kind of way that League of Legends runs on spaghetti code. League of Legends, almost everything was coded as a projectile. It was done by a first-time developer, and it was coded to just work, and every successive update just adds more and more on top of that, and it gets increasingly complex. I think that PUBG is trying to avoid this problem. Unlike League of Legends, they're trying to stop now and back up and re-optimize things going forward, because League is on like 5 years of spaghetti code. It's going to break anytime soon. Conversely, Dota and Fortnite don't have these issues. Dota was developed through Valve with them, and Fortnite was made by Epic Games. They're very experienced game developers. They're very big into optimization. They're very big into PC gaming and stuff like that. So their coding was done right from the beginning. No spaghetti code, no weird bugs, and most everything gets smoothed out and better going forward instead of more strange. PUBG is huge in Asia, whereas Fortnite really isn't. Kind of like Dota and League of Legends, though the comparison isn't quite as accurate because Dota is quite popular in Asian countries, but not like League of Legends. League of Legends just dominates Asia, and PUBG is becoming increasingly a Chinese game and less of an NA game, whereas Fortnite's moving in, so the comparison is better flipped right there, and there are definite skill gap debates between the game. A lot of times people would like to say, well, it's not even really a thing to say, it's just almost an objective fact that Dota 2 takes more skill than League of Legends, and people would say, okay, well, what takes more skill, Fortnite or PUBG? That's a tough one, and I don't really want to come down too hard on one side or the other. It is a bit more of a toss-up. Fortnite has much faster movement, much smoother movement, much more advanced movement. You can jump, you can bounce, you can do crazy things, but especially building. You can build ramps up, you can block bullets, you can set traps, you can build spiral staircases, and lots of strange shapes and things that very few players ever optimize, and it adds an entirely new layer of skill over PUBG. Conversely, the hipfire in Fortnite is, well, it's pretty much all hipfire. Your bloom is really big, your shooting mechanics are questionable at best, and PUBG doesn't have that. PUBG is all about aiming down sights, getting headshots, leaning, peeking, penalties for moving, bonuses for crouching, making sure your gun barrel doesn't stick out of the window, running flash suppressors, red dot sight versus hollow sight, some more advanced things like this that you would see in other shooters, whereas Fortnite be like, well, we tightened up the bloom today. herpaladerpaladerp. So there's, debate there on to which one takes more skill. But given all of this information and this comparison, and using Dota 2 and League of Legends as examples, I'm going to make some predictions about the futures of Fortnite and PUBG. Number one, I believe that Fortnite will have a much bigger player base for a long time, just like League of Legends does/did. The simple reason is that it's a free-to-play game that runs on almost every system, and especially now that you have mobile crossplay with the full game, that's just downright crazy. I'm going to be doing an entirely full video on that later on, but it's hard to beat that when you have to pay for PUBG and you have to have a really good computer to run it, and the Xbox scene is, let's be honest, struggling. Two, I don't believe that PUBG is going to die or disappear any more than Dota did. There's a lot of very negative people in the PUBG community, or, very pro Fortnite people that's like, PUBG's dead, PUBG's rip, it's going to disappear, it's going to go to the garbage bin. That is absolutely not true. PUBG is going to be around for a very, very long time. It is not going to die, it's not going to disappear, it's not going to fall off very much. Even if PUBG falls off to a quarter of what it is now, it's still going to be one of the biggest games in the gaming market, and it's still going to be a very important game for a long time. Number three, Fortnite and PUBG will both be esports in the near future. I know that PUBG is developing its esports. I took part in the Gamescom Invitational. It was an interesting experience, and I would not be surprised if Fortnite starts launching some esports, some official ones, some big ones very soon. However, I believe that the audiences they attract and the type of money that they make are going to be very different. I believe that Fortnite is going to pull raw numbers just like League of Legends will, just because it's got a bigger player base and more people are familiar with it. It's going to get raw numbers on Twitch and YouTube. However, I believe that PUBG is going to have a lot more big money tournaments, it's going to have a lot more old money investors, and it's going to have a lot more big sponsors, for the reason being that you need to have a big, expensive, fancy computer to run PUBG, which means as an audience member, as a customer, or a person that is to be advertised to, you have lots of money. So very high-end PC companies are going to want to market to you, big brands are going to want to market to you, luxury brands are going to market to you, whereas on Fortnite, you're looking at free players, you're looking at people that have no money and play for free, so you're going to get the lower end of advertising apps and things like that. And number four, I believe there's going to be plenty of audience for both of these games on Twitch, YouTube, Mixer, Hulu, whatever in the world it ends up being on. But I believe that Fortnite will have more audience, just because it's free to play and such a big game. The audience is going to be bigger, but there'll still be plenty of audience for both of these games. Guys, that's it for my comparison of Fortnite and PUBG, likening them to Dota 2 and League of Legends. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.